Hello, good afternoon, good evening. I want to welcome everyone this evening. I'm going to give it just a moment so that everyone can get into the Zoom session and get situated. I do want to welcome everyone this evening. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us to learn about everyone's favorite topic, financial aid. I see everyone's slowly making their way into the Zoom room, so thank you all for taking the time out of your evening again to join us this evening. I'm just going to give it just a moment, like I said, to let everyone get in and get comfortable and get familiar with the Zoom settings if you're not already familiar. We will be using the Q&A feature this evening. So you'll see that Q&A button there. So if you do have questions, I have some amazing staff members behind the scenes who will be answering those questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started as people filter into the room. So again, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us to learn more about financial aid here at Syracuse University. My name is Jessica Calhoun. I'm an associate director in our Office of Financial Aid and Scholarship Programs. This evening, I am joined by some of my amazing colleagues who are really running the show behind the scenes. I am just the talking head. They are really making everything happen. We're joined by two of my colleagues in the Office of Admissions, Lauren and Mike. They will be answering your admissions-based questions. So if you do have admissions questions, they will be there to answer those questions. I am also joined by two of my amazing financial aid colleagues, Kristen Wagner and Kathy Hill. They will be answering your financial aid questions behind the scenes. So again, we have some amazing people behind the scenes who are here to assist us and make sure that everything is running and going smoothly. So my name is Jessica Calhoun. I am going into my 10th year here at Syracuse University. Really excited to talk to you this evening about financial aid, something that I am very passionate about. Financial aid really did change my life and change my entire academic and professional trajectory. So really excited to talk more about it this evening. So as we get started, we're going to answer some of your biggest questions first. Again, biggest questions first. First and foremost, the biggest question that we get is the session being recorded? Yes, it is. This session is being recorded. It will be posted on our admissions YouTube page. So you can go ahead and log into that admissions YouTube page. It'll probably be about 48 hours after this session that will be available on YouTube. So if for some reason you have questions after the fact, or you want to send it to somebody else, or you just want to review it again because you just love watching me talk about financial aid for 45 minutes, that session will be available on YouTube, and it is, like I said, is being recorded. Please also look at the chat. Mike is dropping some great information into the chat, so links to various pages, links to various information. And so definitely take a look at the chat and look at those various items that are being dropped in there for you. So other big questions first. As many of you have probably already seen and probably already know, the FAFSA is undergoing something that they have called a soft launch, which means the FAFSA is unavailable for sporadic periods of time throughout the day. So you could have tried to log in and tried to complete the FAFSA, and it says it's undergoing maintenance. You can't access it right now. We know that. Every single institution across the country knows that. So please, at this time, do not stress if you cannot go in and currently complete the FAFSA. For our regular decision population of students, the FAFSA is not due until January 25th. So you still have about 15 days to go out and complete the FAFSA. And based on all of the information that we have seen, it looks like that time that the FAFSA is available is becoming longer and longer. Initially, it was just a few hours. Now it's almost half a day to 3/4 of the day that FAFSA is available. So again, if you cannot access it now or you're having trouble right now, please don't stress. We understand that there are a lot of questions and still a lot of concerns that are happening. So if it's causing you any stress, I recommend holding off, waiting maybe a couple more days, and then going out and to complete the FAFSA. We are tracking all of the errors and all of the delays that are happening with the FAFSA. So there are families that are encountering issues as they complete the FAFSA. We are tracking those issues. There is a page on Federal Student Aid's website specifically for financial aid administrators so that we can see the errors and see how the Department of Education is resolving those errors. So if you're encountering issues, if you can't get to a certain screen, Please don't stress, those errors are being tracked and we are well aware of those errors and what is happening. And so for those of you who are regular decision applicants, we do highly recommend and really hope that you have already done the CSS profile. So the CSS profile is the College Scholarship Service profile. It is through the College Board, and that is the application and how we determine our institutional grant funding. So the FAFSA is your application for all of our federal aid. The CSS profile, along with the FAFSA, is how we determine our institutional financial aid funding. So again, that CSS profile was due on January 5th. If you have not completed the CSS profile, I highly recommend that you go out and complete that as soon as possible. We do award students on a funds available basis, but if you're just a couple of days late, do not stress. You can go out and fill it out now. One thing I will say is I highly recommend that you do not wait until you are admitted to complete the FAFSA and the profile. That will put you in the bottom of the list of students who are getting their financial aid award. We will award students who applied by those deadlines first, and so you could see some delays in receiving your financial aid awards if you do wait till you're admitted. And we don't want that stress on you or on us. So do us all a favor, do me a favor, so I don't have to stress out when it comes to an award notification timeline. Just go ahead and fill out those applications now. That way, when it comes time for us to notify you, everything will be ready to go. And again, that deadline was January 5th, but we will accept late applications for the CSS profile, but highly recommend that you do that as soon as possible. Okay, so let's talk about financial aid here at Syracuse University. So financial aid really breaks down into two different types of aid. There's gift aid, which is aid that does not need to be repaid. It is a gift to you. And that includes things like merit scholarships, grants, both state grants, federal grants, institutional grants, outside scholarships, private scholarships, things like that. And then there are other types of aid called self-help aid. And that is things like student loans, parent loans, private loans, and work study. The self-help aid either has to be repaid or there is a work component similar to a federal work study award. So overall, in the previous academic year, Syracuse University awarded $465 million in total financial aid. Of that $465 million, $349 million of that was in the form of Syracuse University grants and scholarships. So again, that is $349 million in gift aid that Syracuse University gave to make Syracuse University more affordable for students, whether it was grant funding based on financial need or it was scholarship funding based on academic merit. So again, we really highly recommend that you complete these financial aid applications so that you can make yourself eligible for these different types of aid. So here are all of the different types of financial aid, and there's actually more on this list. There's a lot more different types of aid, but this is the bulk of what we award in terms of financial aid. So there are things like grants, whether it's, again, federal grants, state grants, institutional grants, all, again, gift aid that is given to students. Scholarships, whether it's a merit scholarship, whether it's an outside scholarship. We have both Army and Air Force ROTC that offer scholarships to students, local scholarships like Say Yes, loans, federal loans, parent loans, student loans, all of those different things, work study, tuition benefits, and VA benefits. So when we talk about financial aid, we're talking about all of these different things. So whenever anybody says, oh, I'm not eligible for financial aid, but I'm eligible for work study is a type of financial aid. So when we talk about your financial aid award, it could be just your VA benefits. It could be just your tuition benefits. It could be just federal loans. It could be just alternative loans. It could be, just one or many of these different components. So when we talk about what is financial aid, again, it could encompass one or many of these different types of awards. Okay, so really important question, and Mike and Lauren are in the background to answer some more questions about merit scholarships, but a little bit of information about how we process merit scholarships here at Syracuse University. There is no separate application for merit scholarships here at Syracuse University. You do not have to fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile to be considered for merit-based scholarship funding. Merit-based scholarships are considered based on the overall strength of your application for admission. So again, the same criteria that they're looking at for your admissions application is the same criteria they're looking at for merit scholarships. And the merit scholarships are determined by the Office of Admission at the time of admission. So when you receive your admissions decision, it will say, congratulations, here's the program or major that you're admitted to. And if you're awarded a merit scholarship, it will also be within that letter. It'll say, you have been awarded a merit scholarship in this amount. So you will see that right within the letter. Again, there is no separate application for these academic merit scholarships, and you do not have to fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile to be considered for merit-based scholarship funding. Okay, in terms of need-based financial aid, again, not awards based on academic merit. This is based on families' financial need. There are 2, sometimes 3 applications that students need to complete in order to be eligible for our need-based financial aid. So the first, everyone should be pretty familiar with. We've heard about it for the last year, about all the changes that are happening. That is the FAFSA. That is the free application for federal student aid. It is required every year that you are interested in being considered for need-based financial aid at Syracuse University. And that is, again, the free application is very important. There have been some nefarious actors who were trying to get people to pay to complete the FAFSA. That is a free application. Mike will drop the link to the FAFSA in the chat. That way you can make sure that you're going to the correct site. The second application is the CSS profile. We use the FAFSA information and the information on the CSS profile to determine our Syracuse University grant funding. Again, remember I showed you that number, that $349 million in grants and scholarships. A lot of that is based on information we receive from the FAFSA and the CSS profile. If you just complete the FAFSA, we will just consider you for federal aid, so federal grants, federal loans, federal work study. If you complete both the FAFSA and the CSS profile, that opens you up to all of the different types of need-based financial aid that Syracuse University offers. So again, make sure you complete that CSS profile. That is required only in the first year, so you don't have to do it in subsequent years. That information will carry over from year to year, but make sure that you do complete that in that first year and you don't hold off on completing the CSS profile. If you are a New York State resident, you will also need to complete the New York State TAP application. So the TAP Tuition Assistance Program. Mike will drop the links to the New York State TAP application. It's on a website called HESC, H-E-S-C. And that is required each year to determine eligibility for that New York State TAP award. So something you can also look at, again, if you are a New York State resident. I know I think about 60% of our students are not New York State residents, but we want to make sure that our New York State residents are completing that New York State TAP application to be considered for New York State aid. So again, 2, maybe even 3 applications for those need-based financial aid awards. Okay, so FAFSA is changing. Yes, you've heard about this a lot. I'm sure your high school guidance counselors are talking about this a lot. This has been kind of really the main focus of my waking hours for the last 6 to 9 months, is really all of these changes and what's going on with the FAFSA. So again, the major changes due to the FAFSA Simplification Act, really trying to make sure that the FAFSA is more accessible, shorter, and less cumbersome for families to complete. So what you will see here are kind of the changes between the old FAFSA and now what you're seeing now on the new FAFSA. So previously, when you completed the FAFSA, there could be up to 108 questions on the FAFSA. Now that is down to about 36. It could be even less for you when you complete the FAFSA. I actually went in and was able to complete the FAFSA myself. It took me about 5 to 10 minutes. I think I was pretty quick on completing it, but I also spend, like I said, all of my waking hours thinking about financial aid and thinking about the FAFSA. So I think I got through it a little quicker than most people, but by and large, it was much easier than it was in previous years. Again, so previously with the FAFSA, it ended up with a number called your expected family contribution, or EFC. That was that kind of final number that you would see when you submitted the FAFSA. That has changed now and is now the student aid index or SAI. So it was, again, EFC, expected family contribution. That was a number that we're used to seeing all the time. Now it spits out a number called the Student Aid Index, and that is the index on where you fall within federal Pell Grant eligibility. So that is that big change and that final number. Previously, there was an adjustment based on the number of people in your family that were in college. So if you had multiple students in college, there was an adjustment to your contribution based on the number in college. Now, they're still asking about the number of people in your family that are in college, but that adjustment is not made. So one thing I will say, though, that is different with Syracuse University is that we are looking at the CSS profile and we are still making that adjustment on the institutional side. So we are still adjusting your contribution based on the number in college on the CSS profile side. So we're still looking at that. So those of you that have multiple students in college at the same time, I know that's a stressful change for a lot of you. Just be a little bit calmed by the fact that that information is being calculated on the institutional side at Syracuse University. And as you see, it was previously available on October 1st. That did not happen this year. It was available at the very end of December this year, still undergoing that soft launch, hoping for that full launch, that full availability to happen soon. So what can you do now? For those of you that are kind of going through this process, some of you might have already been through this process, but what you can do now is create your federal student aid account. So you, first and foremost, the student, need to complete a federal student aid account. I just want to make sure. I see somebody said they lost audio. I want to make sure that everybody can still hear me. Okay, I think we're okay. So make sure that you complete a federal student aid account if you have not already. So first and foremost, you, the student, need to complete your own federal student aid account, and then your parent, spouse, or step parent, if applicable, might also need to complete a federal student aid account, because you will need to invite various people to be a contributor onto your FAFSA. So you, the student. Okay, perfect. I saw the little note about losing audio and I was like, well, I'm going to be talking to nobody here for a second. So good. I'm glad we all can hear. Great. So you, the student, for most of our regular decision population, you will probably invite one or both of your parents to be a contributor on your FAFSA. If you're an independent student and you're married, then you will invite your spouse, but by and large, most of the people on this call and in this webinar will be inviting a parent to be a contributor on the FAFSA. The only time you would need to invite both parents to be a contributor on the FAFSA is if your parents do not file a married filing joint tax return. So if your parents are married, but they are filing married filing separate, we will need both of them to be invited as a contributor so that both of their tax information can be pulled in and filled into your FAFSA. So again, if your parents are married and they filed married filing joint, only one parent needs to be a contributor, because only one parent needs to kind of pull their 1040, their 2022 tax information right into the FAFSA. However, there are situations where parents file married filing separately. And in that case, we need to get consent from both parents to pull their individual tax information into the FAFSA. So I hope that I explained that well. And if you have more questions about that, please feel free to drop that into the chat. So again, both the parent and student need to create an account. You need to identify your contributors. There's a great video on our website. Mike, if you can drop the 24-25 FAFSA information link into the chat, they can actually have a link to that video about how to identify who the contributors are. And then also, if your parents are divorced, separated, or not married and not living together, you will need to determine who your parent of record is. And I do have a really great slide on that. I will talk about that in just a moment. But you'll need to figure out which parent is that kind of parent of record. It used to be custodial versus non-custodial parent. Now they refer to it as the parent of record. Okay, what else can you do in the meantime is collect important information that might be asked on the FAFSA. That way you're ready for that information as you go and fill it out. So that could be anything like your 2022 tax returns, records of child support received, current balances of cash, checking, savings account, and net worth of investment businesses and farms. That is also a change that is happening on the FAFSA. Is previously they were not asking about small businesses or small family farms. Now they will be asking those questions. So if you or your parent are a business owner, if you own an LLC, an S corporation, a C corporation, you will want to have the 2022 tax information for those businesses available, and you're ready to fill out that information when you complete the FAFSA. So just, again, make sure you have that information handy. That way, you can easily fill in those questions and not have to stress too much about what the answer is to those questions. And then, again, entering students should complete the CSS profile as soon as possible. Again, to be considered for all of the need-based financial aid that Syracuse has to offer, you will want to complete both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Those will need to be completed in that first year. Again, that opens you up to all of the need-based financial aid that Syracuse University has to offer. And that is that link to that 2025 FAFSA information if you want to use the QR code to access that information. So this is the handy dandy chart that I made to determine who your parent of record is. There is a link there. You can, again, use that QR code, or Mike can link out to that PDF into the chat. And then that way you can use that flow chart to kind of determine who your parent of record again, that is situations where if your biological or adoptive parents are divorced, separated, or unmarried and not living together, you will need to determine which parent is your parent of record. And that parent will need to be the same parent on the FAFSA as it is on the CSS profile. So how do we determine who your parent of record is? Again, these are just cases where biological adoptive parents are divorced, separated, or unmarried and not living together. So it is the parent that provided more financial support in the past 12 months. That is your parent of record for financial aid purposes. Previously, they were asking which parent did you live with more, who was the custodial parent. Now it is simply which parent provided the majority of your financial support. If your parents provided equal support in the past 12 months, then that parent of record is the one with the greater amount of income and assets. So if you're on the fence, you're like, you know what, it could just be, like a couple dollars here and there, I'm not really sure which parent it is, then it is the parent that had the greater amount of income and assets. So again, support could be anything from child support to in-kind support, like paying for mortgages or tuition for schools and things like that. Let's see, there is a question. Parent can invite for the FAFSA, you can file jointly. So if you filed a joint tax return, you only need to invite one parent as a contributor, because you only need to pull in that one tax return, that married filing joint tax return. If your parents filed married filing separately, both parents will need to be invited as contributors, because there are two separate tax returns that need to be pulled in to the FAFSA. So that's a little bit of a difference from previous years. So I hope that answers that question. Again, so back to the parent of record information. The parent of record should match. It should be the same person on the FAFSA as it is on the CSS profile. So always a good kind of rule of thumb for us is, while you're completing the CSS profile or while you're completing the FAFSA, is have that application already up so the information matches between those two applications. Oftentimes that we run into an issue where the information that you provided on the FAFSA is very different than the information that you provided on the CSS profile. And so what you'll want to do is just, again, make sure that matches. Because if you say you have investment net worth of $100,000 on the FAFSA and $1 million on the CSS profile, we're going to have to go out and ask you, okay, which one is correct? So again, make sure that that information matches. So again, yes, the deadline for the CSS profile is January 5th. We will accept late applications for the CSS profile, but recommend that you get it in as soon as possible. So Syracuse University also requires, through the College Board, something called the non-custodial parent profile. So that is the parent that is not the parent of record. That is a separate profile that does need to be completed. And there is a waiver process for the non-custodial parent profile, but that is only in cases of abuse, abandonment, estrangement, incarceration, things like that. In general, most non-custodial parents will need to create their own College Board account and complete that non-custodial parent profile. So that is part of the financial aid application process. And we will be sending out, hopefully soon, a reminder email for anyone that has not yet completed the non-custodial parent profile, and then also some information about how that waiver process works. You can look at the College Board's information on the non-custodial parent waiver because it does have some information right there on the College Board's page. So you can kind of see what the criteria that they set forth in, but we have our own kind of internal process for that non-custodial parent. Let's see. Okay, so more frequently asked questions. So we are working on sending out a confirmation email to students who have already completed the CSS profile. So if you're saying, Jessica, stop telling me about January 5th because I already completed the profile, great. That is excellent. I'm very happy to hear that. And we will send you a profile confirmation email to let you know that we have received it. And so just keep an eye on your email. I know you're getting a lot of emails right now, but hopefully that email should be going out soon. So take a look, keep an eye out for that. We will also be sending out that reminder email out for the non-custodial parent profile and information about the waiver process. Lastly, you should have received an information about activating your Net ID. That is just the first step in accessing something called MySlice. MySlice is the Syracuse University student portal. Right now, for regular decision students, there is no information in your MySlice page that you need to go in and access. However, once we start receiving the FAFSA, and again, that is going to be delayed, the Department of Education notified us on November 15th of 2023 that there is going to be a bit of a delay between when students submit the FAFSA and when the schools actually receive the FAFSA. And so right now they are anticipating it's going to be the end of January until any FAFSA information is sent out to schools. So right now we are not, even though you're going in there and completing the FAFSA, we are not receiving FAFSA information. And it will likely not be again till the end of January, early February before we're starting to able to load your FAFSA information into the system. At that time, then we will start sending you information about going out to MySlice, if there's missing information, if we need more information. But right now, again, for regular decision students, there is nothing in your MySlice account right now. So don't stress too much about going out and trying to access that. Just go and activate your Net ID, create that account, save your password. That way, when we send you those emails and it's time to go out to MySlice, that you will be ready and able to just log right in and access those pages. Okay, I think that I have answered, and it looks like my team is doing a phenomenal job in the background answering these questions because there are no open questions right now. But what I want to say is that I know this process is stressful for a lot of people, especially for those of you who are going into the FAFSA and you're encountering those roadblocks along the way. The one thing that I can urge right now is patience. This is a brand new process, not only for the Department of Education, but for every financial aid office across the country. Each office is adapting to these changes to the FAFSA. Our office is doing the best we possibly can to adapt to those changes, but we are learning right along with you about what problems that families are encountering, the issues that are happening, some of the delays, some of the new questions or new concerns that are popping up with these new FAFSA. So please, one thing I can only encourage is patience on your part. So again, if you are in the FAFSA and it's stressing you out and you're like, I can't get any farther, I would take a step back, maybe wait a day or two, and then go in and try to fill out the FAFSA again. If there is some sort of catastrophic issue that happens with the FAFSA and families really aren't able to go and complete them, and it's really becoming an issue, we will look at possibly changing our FAFSA deadline. But right now, it does look like the Department of Education is handling a lot of these errors that are coming up and these issues that are coming up fairly well. So again, if you it looks like there's a question in here about not being able to complete the parent part of it. And again, my biggest thing for you right now is patience. Unfortunately, most financial aid offices aren't able to troubleshoot individual issues that you're having on the FAFSA. We wish you could. We wish we could, but again, we are learning some of these issues that are happening. The confirmation emails will go out to the student. One thing I can highly recommend is if you have a way of kind of sharing that email information and all of that, we will. That is a great way to kind of get those emails. Eventually, we will show you how to create something called a parent proxy account in MySlice. We'll give you the instructions for creating that account. That way you can go out and see the students' to-do list to look at any missing information, award notices, all of those things. Again, that is not available right now for our regular decision student population, but eventually we will show you that information about creating that parent proxy account. As a student in high school, am I still obligated to fill out the FAFSA? So no one is obligated to fill out the FAFSA. It is not a requirement. It is the requirement to fill it out if you would like to be considered for need-based financial aid. So that is a requirement if you would like to apply for need-based financial aid. So we do have students at Syracuse University who do not apply for any financial aid, and they do not fill out the FAFSA, but we highly recommend that even if you're on the fence on whether you're going to need aid or not, we still recommend that you complete the FAFSA just to determine what type of eligibility that you might have. I will complete the CSS profile today. We'll be behind. Yes, so again, we're on the 10th right now. We're only 5 days past the deadline. Again, I'm trying to push everyone to complete it sooner rather than those that wait until after they receive their admissions notification and then complete the CSS profile. But if you're only about 5 days late, don't stress too much in that regard. Again, I'm trying to ward off those people who are waiting until March, April, May to complete the CSS profile. How do I add more children to the FAFSA? Yes, so the FAFSA is pulling in information from your tax return, but you can edit that information. I have to look and see what question it is on the FAFSA, but you can, once that information comes in from your federal tax return and it lists the number of dependents, you are able to make a change to that number because we know not everybody, the dependents they claim might not be every student that's in their household. How do you add more children to the FAFSA? Same thing there. So again, it's if you're pulling in your federal tax information and the dependents that you've listed on your 2022 taxes might not match, maybe you split who claims who from year to year, you can go in and you should be able to edit that information on the FAFSA. Can a merit scholarship be compounded with any FAFSA? So yes, so you can receive a combination of all various types of aid. We have students that receive merit scholarships, grants, funding, federal loans, federal work study, New York State awards, all of the outside scholarships. You can be awarded till something called the cost of attendance. And that is how we determine the amount that it would cost for a student to live and go to school for 9 months while they're here at Syracuse University. Merit scholarships are tuition specific. So if you are awarded a tuition-based award, that can only go up to the cost of a tuition. So if you're getting something like the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is also tuition specific, or a tuition, an award that's specifically towards tuition, it can only equal the total amount of tuition. So we will adjust some type of aid if for some reason it would go over. Are you able to review your CSS profile after it's submitted? Yes, you can go and make corrections to the CSS profile. So that is something that you are able to do. I did not get asked any asset or investment questions when I did the FAFSA. Is this an error? No, there's actually some skip logic in there for some students that based on some income thresholds or other information that it could skip that asset questions entirely on the FAFSA. If for some reason that is an error, we will send out more information to request them from you, but sometimes there are situations where those questions are automatically skipped. So that's why I always say approximately 36 questions on the FAFSA, because there is an internal logic that does skip some questions. If I made a mistake on the CSS profile, do I get noticed? So you can go, if you made a mistake on the profile, you can go and make a correction to the profile and do that. However, if we do find what we call conflicting information between those two applications, we will likely reach out to you to resolve that conflict. Again, if you say, okay, I had $1 million here and that was only $100,000 here, it was like, okay, did you add a zero or did you forget a zero, right? So we'll probably reach out to you to resolve that conflicting information. So if we're going to have 3 kids in college, how do you add the other 2? So again, that's information that you can include both on the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So when you go to fill out the CSS profile, ask for the number in your household, number in your family, and then again, the number of those people that are in college. If you feel like there's an error on any of those questions, please reach out to us. We cannot start correcting the FAFSA until we receive the FAFSA. You can also not make corrections likely until February to the FAFSA. So there'll be a little bit of a delay. But again, if you have some concerns about that, don't be afraid to reach out to us. Do you recommend any scholarship websites to find outside scholarships? That's a great question. What I will say is that, one, do not pay for scholarship searches. There are, again, some nefarious actors out there that say, oh, if you just give us $25, we can enter you into a database and you're definitely going to get a scholarship. Do not pay for scholarship searches. I highly recommend starting locally. You can talk to your high school guidance counselor. They often have information about local scholarships, local information. There is an outside scholarship webpage that we have. I don't know if Kristen or Kathy, if you could give them the link to our outside scholarship page, but there are some national scholarships also out there that you can also do some searches for. Is the CSS profile required for merit financial aid? So merit-based scholarships are all based on your application for admission there, and you are not required to fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile in order to be considered for merit-based scholarship. However, again, all of the need-based financial aid, those 2 applications are required. If we only submit the CSS and not the FAFSA, will we be considered for financial aid? No, you will do that. You can only submit the FAFSA, but you cannot only submit the CSS profile. In order to be considered for institutional financial aid, you do need to submit both the FAFSA and the CSS profile to be considered. So again, you can just apply for federal aid, federal grants, federal loans, federal work study, and that's all, but you will need to complete both the FAFSA and the profile to be considered for our Syracuse University grant funding. If you are married filing jointly, is there a non-custodial parent? So the non-custodial parent is only if the student's biological or adoptive parents are divorced, separated, or not married and not living together. So that is the only situation. Again, the questions are very, hopefully very clear on the FAFSA and the profile about that information. You previously stated that merit awards would be included in the acceptance letter. Will the total aid summary be included, or will need-based aids be communicated separately? That is correct. Need-based financial aid will be a separate email communication. Just the merit scholarship, which is determined by the Office of Admission at the time of admission, will be communicated in your admissions decision letter. We are hoping to go out with award notifications shortly after the admissions notification goes out. We were pretty successful, I would say, with our early decision population of students with being able to send out those early decision award notices right after the students got their admissions notices. So I was pretty happy about that. But again, if you hold off on completing all of the financial aid applications, that also could delay that award notification. FAFSA you will not be able to make corrections to the FAFSA until February, correct. Most recent information we received from the Department of Education is, again, you can make that initial submission of the FAFSA, but neither schools like Syracuse or you as an individual can go in and make those corrections to the FAFSA until probably about February timeframe. If I'm using my son's post-9/11 GI Bill for my son's tuition, will he still be considered for scholarships? Yes. Yes, and Syracuse University is a yellow ribbon school, which means if you are at the 100% tier for the post 9/11 GI Bill, that it does cover full tuition and fees here at Syracuse University. You're also eligible for that monthly housing allowance. But again, because the VA likes to be the payer of last resort, so that merit scholarship will be paid towards tuition first, and then the post 9/11 GI Bill will pay whatever's left. The email address for our Office of Veteran Success, which is our certifying officials, is just veterans plural at syr.edu. I'm sure Mike can type an answer into your question for you, but you can also email them and they can provide more information on that certification process. Okay, I talked for a long time. You asked some phenomenal questions. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your evening to learn more about financial aid here at Syracuse University. This is something, again, I am very passionate about, and I really love talking to families, and I love the opportunity to answer a lot of these questions en masse. That way you don't have to stress so much about them. Let me see, I do have some more questions coming in. Can you please repeat the non-custodial parent answer? So I think the question that you answered is if the student's biological or adoptive parents are married, then there is no non-custodial parent. And then is a common error in setting up account for the FAFSA and getting stuck. That is a common error. There are some tutorial videos if you're having issues getting stuck on the FAFSA. You can email again, or you can go to that page, that 2425 FAFSA information page. There's a lot of good information there. But again, those are those kind of situations where I really recommend patience, because a lot of times when you're hitting those roadblocks, that's usually just some sort of issue that they're having internally with the Department of Education. I had luck clearing my computer history when getting stuck on the FAFSA. Barbara has some great advice for people to clear your cookies or clear your browsing history or try a different browser. So if you're having issues, again, with the FAFSA, sometimes clearing that history, clearing cookies, clearing your cache or cache, whatever, however different people pronounce it, is a good way to have better luck with that. When will this be available on YouTube? Hopefully, Mike might have the answer to that question. Yeah, Barbara said also incognito mode, but hopefully this will be available before the end of the week. So thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day. Mike did drop the link to our email us page if you have more questions. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day. I hope you have a great weekend. It's not even Friday. A great week and a great day. And we're excited to talk to you more about financial aid. Have a good evening. Bye.